Hey, what's up, guys? It's Liberty Madison, that tech girl, and I love technology. One of the things I want to come on and talk to you about between me and you, just us two, is ask better questions. I don't know if you're over at LinkedIn, but I'm over at LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I want to invite you to come hang out with me over at LinkedIn. Let me say something about LinkedIn. LinkedIn, that's what I got the chicks. They got the checks on LinkedIn. Over here, they got these little blue checks. No one cares about that over at LinkedIn. They have actual checks, okay? I think I forgot to put my filter on, but we are already in this conversation, so let's go. Hey, like I say, I'm not a beauty influencer. This is what it looks like. We're about to dive into this conversation. One of the things that I want to talk about is ask better questions. Why? Why do we want to do that? Why do we want to ask better questions? I'll tell you why. I'm just going to read to you this post on LinkedIn. This is interesting because I wasn't expecting so much response on it because it seems so pedestrian. It seems so basic, dare I might say beta, but it just seemed like the foundation of life. But one of the things that I am realizing is that things that are common are not common for all. Here we go. Ask better questions. And here's why. You can find this if you want to take a look. You can find this at Liberty Madison over on LinkedIn. Whether I'm on stage, on air, on Zoom with a Fortune 100 tech company, or in a strategy session with a scrappy startup, one principle always holds true. Better questions lead to better outcomes. Whether you're searching for product market fit, refining your revenue model, landing your next role, or pitching a new product, it starts with the questions you ask. Here's the truth. Most people simply don't ask any questions. No question whatsoever. But if you're reading this, you're not most people. And we must learn, us, me and you, must learn to ask better questions, sharper, more strategic questions. That's why people hire me. I ask questions that uncover the real story. So I craft a narrative and a product or strategy that is driven by results. It's results driven. My edge in tech, get this, it's my foundation in media. Yes, that's true. As a journalist, on-air TV host, live event MC, I, most of all, outside of that, am curious. I'm strategically curious with a strategic mind. Here's a tip. When you want to ask better questions, be curious. Seriously. Be curious. Just start by being curious, but don't stop there. Don't stop there being curious, but it's a good start. Be strategically curious. Strategic curiosity will open the door for your first customer, for your next investor, or your breakout opportunity, or your next role. I help founders and executives, creators communicate clearly, with confidence and with purpose, so that they can land those dream roles, pitch products that convert, and reduce the sales cycle. Do you know how challenging it is to have a just ridiculous sales cycle when if you can speak clearly and focus on positioning, the right positioning will help you reduce the sales cycle, which will directly impact your bottom line so you can see ROI. If your message doesn't open doors, you find yourself rambling on, and you're just like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. I think I've left the listener confused. That's something that you can work on and get better at. It's a skill set that you can learn, and I can help you with that. One of the things that I find from this post is that the comments, the shares, the DMs, the conversations that it started and ignited, I am shocked. I thought everyone was asking better questions, but they're not. One of the things that I did not list in this particular LinkedIn post is I gave you a tip on asking better questions and being strategically curious. But one of the things that I do want to start you off with, whether I'm talking or hosting Pitch a Nonprofit, which is nonprofit founders to teaching them how to pitch like tech founders, or working with senior leader executives over at JP Morgan Chase, ServiceNow, Salesforce, whoever I'm talking to, or scrappy startups, because I love a startup. Y'all, I love me a startup, especially in prop tech, if I'm talking with them. One of the things that I always say, and this also extends to the average American, one thing that you want to focus on, this is excellent sales enablement tool, is always focus on the listener. Know who you're talking to. That's it. That's the tip. Know who you're talking to. And I talk about that on an episode on Big Papa Code's podcast, which is Deeper Than Code. And I talk about the WIFM. The WIFM is what's in it for me. That is it. People don't listen to you to hear about you. They're listening to you to hear about them. So if you can identify the listener, you can then start going into their perspectives, their thoughts, what they're thinking, and most importantly, what's most important to them. That's the way I enter every conversation. So when you meet me, I need to know exactly what we're grounding this conversation in, because you don't necessarily need to know that I've been country western line dancing for over a decade and was the official country western line dance instructor for the city of Oakland. You don't need to know that if you go to countrywesternlinedancing.com, you can book me. I have a show that's called Tech Two-Step that I do as a community building country western experience that I've executed at major tech companies. You possibly don't need to know that, but you may need to know that I'm an advisor at Hatchet Ventures and I focus specifically on prop tech portfolio companies. You may need to know that. You may need to know that when I'm not on air as Liberty Madison That Tech Girl, I take those same communication skills and package them for executives and help them roll out products. I help them talk to humans so they can get back to talking to robots. You may need to know that I work with senior leader executives and write their speeches. You may need to know that I help roll out that product in a live event. You may need to know that. You may not need to know that I love country western with a passion. You may not need to know that. You may not need to go to countrywesternlinedancing.com and see me dancing there with the Facebook kids. You may not need to know that I started the movement of prop tech at South by Southwest and expanding it beyond what we initially thought. You may not need to know that I love innovation in real estate. You may not need to know that the number one prop tech company in the world is Airbnb. You may not be centered on how data runs AI. You may just be focused on AI. You may not need to know that the future is data centers. You may not need to know that we are in a paradigm shift that is changing rapidly, where you need to focus on God, country, and AI. You may not need to know that. You may not need to know that I started one of the largest data science communities in Silicon Valley. You may not need to know that. You may not need to know that I got my start in prop tech by launching Startup House Oakland, which 24/7 access to data scientists, engineers, and really got it off the ground with my strategic partnership with the data incubator. You may not need to know that I ran programming for that, but what you may need to know is whatever's relevant to you. So one thing that I will say, I want to see you over there on LinkedIn, Liberty Madison over there on LinkedIn. I want to see you there. But what you may need to know is who you're talking to. Again, this started off by this post that I was surprised got so much engagement. I was like, what? Isn't everyone asking better questions? They're not. That's what I want to empower you to do. Ask better questions, because that way you can have a solution that fits. When you're asking the wrong question, who cares? Who cares? So I want you to know who you're speaking to. That's first. That's the number one thing that you need to do. Whether it's a customer, whether it's a potential customer, whether you're launching something, know your ICPs. That's that. We won't get into that. We'll just start with ask better questions. And then when we look at who are you asking these questions to, know who you're speaking to. And that even goes into play with the dreaded, especially if you guys know me, the dreaded question that you're always presented with. If I'm working with you or coaching you, never ask anyone this question. I'm going to say it right here, right now, and I'm going to repeat it and scream it off the rooftops. Never ask anyone, what do you do? So what do you do? What do you do? Never ask that question. We'll go into a whole talk on why you should not ask that question. Just don't do it. It's ridiculous. But I want you to ask better questions. And what sparked this particular post on LinkedIn that got this engagement in DMs is, again, I thought people were out here asking better questions, and they're not. They're not asking better questions. And I note in this particular post that most people simply don't ask questions, which is beyond frustrating for me as a person who is a professionally trained on-air camera TV host. You have to engage in conversation, and most people simply don't. You're going to stand ahead of the crowd, of the group, just by asking a follow-up question. I've been on calls today. I think a call yesterday, today. You can say something, people will act like it's an interrogation because they'll be like, noted. They won't ask a follow-up question to anything that you said that is not active listening. I don't want you guys out here walking around with that. Don't do that. So first off, simply by asking a question, you will be above the rest. You'll have that tool. You'll have that in your little toolbox. Outside of that, let's talk about strategically aligned questions that you want to ask. That's going to help you come up with a solution that will move your product, your brand, and your communication forward. Outside of that, which is not included in this post, is the fact that we got to know who we're talking to. Okay, let's see here. Ironically, I don't like meeting people, and the first thing they ask me, I found myself asking in conversation, makes me cringe. After my own heart, makes me cringe. This is good. This is good. The questions we ask define our relationships and business. Absolutely. Absolutely. And what I'm going to do, thank you so much, all the way from Philadelphia, chiming in on this conversation. Thank you so much. When I'm coaching in communications with executives and professionals, I want to make sure that's clear. It's just not senior, because you don't need to be C-suite to communicate properly. You just need to be a functioning human who wants to make an impact in your society or whoever you're in conversation with. One thing that I will say, if you're in a situation, you're at a live event, you are in a room, and you're like, oh my God, I don't know how to start this conversation. I'm going to give you a tip, because you're here right now. It's me and you. You're here right now. You don't have to say, what do you do? No, that's invasive. It's not personal. And they've heard it 50 billion times. And then you're putting them more so on, you're not creating a relationship. You're putting them kind of in a different hat. I don't know about you, but you don't want to meet someone in their LinkedIn persona. You kind of want to meet them on their Instagram or maybe Snapchat, depending on what you're into, and their Snapchat persona. You don't want to automatically put them in their LinkedIn persona because we show up differently. Maybe you want to meet the Facebook them, or you want to meet the Instagram them. Do not want to do that. So one of the things that you can say, there's so many things. Let me know if you want me to put together a guide on how I build relationships and maybe 10 things that I do to say other than, so what do you do? Lord, that's the worst. But one of the things you can say is, so how do you spend your time? That's it. That's it. It's one of my favorites, because then, let me tell you why it's one of my favorites. They're going to talk about, that's my speaker, they're going to talk about what's most important to them. And what did we talk about earlier? Every conversation you have, it's with them driven, okay? Every conversation that you have is with them driven. People are not listening to you to talk about you. They're listening to you to talk about them. They're listening for them in that conversation, and we want to be aware of that for human psychology and communication, because if you're communicating, you're never want to talk at someone. You want to, hopefully you're communicating to drive a purpose, an action, or dare I say, you're persuading them to do something, to act on your behalf. And what we want to do, if we want them to go to action, we want to know what drives them. And what drives them is going to be what's most important to them. That's all we in this conversation for, is what is most important to this person? How can I intersect? And how can we create a JV deal here? Exactly. Because what we talked about earlier, it's just not about business. It's not about profession. You could be a person, and I'm giving you this, guys, so you don't have to think, oh, I don't have a startup and I'm not a C-suite executive. I don't need this. Where are you talking about, Liberty? You can be a person who is at a PTA meeting and you're trying to get the PTA board on your side. Communication. You could be a person who just ran into a law enforcement officer and you're just like, girl, I do not need this ticket today. Let me figure out something that is going to get me out of this situation. Communication is something, and it's one of the things that when I'm training executives and professionals, if you know me, you know I never use the term public speaking, because when they talk about public speaking, typically people have a visual in their head of what public speaking looks like. Public speaking to most people looks like a stage and a laser pointer. No. Me, personally, when you work with me, we're not talking about public speaking. We're talking about speaking in public. What is speaking in public? When you're talking to anyone, when you're talking to any particular person, it could be the person at the HEB. It could be the people at the Home Depot who gave you the discount because you understand how to talk to them. It's that. You have those moments. You have those moments throughout your life. It's not about the stage. there can be a stage. We love us a stage. There can be a stage, but it's not about that. It's about the office politics that you have to navigate every day. It's the office politics. It's about the politics that you have to navigate for your family. I've seen what it looks like when you don't know how to communicate well and they take advantage of you. I've seen it. I don't want you in that situation. So one of the things, let's see, we have a question here. This type of communication should be taught to school-age children. Absolutely. It's funny you say that. If you go to a previous LinkedIn post, I was talking about, I need to know how to name it. So I would love if you chime in, hit me in the DMs, is I feel like, and I talk about this on podcasts whenever anyone asks me a question about technology, is Liberty Madison that tech girl? People tend to think that I'm going to say that technology is the most important and valuable skill that you should have in life. I don't think that. Yes, I love technology. I love technology more than anything. However, one thing that I would tell you is more valuable than technology, but they're not necessarily comparable. I think they are a complement. One thing that I can say is communication skills. And again, I don't like to house it with public speaking because, again, you work with me. My theory is it's speaking in public. Anytime you have to present yourself and present yourself to a board, to a group of another person, to your husband, to your wife, you need to know these skills. You need to tie it in with human psychology. You need to tie it in with persuasion, and you need to always ask better questions. Let's see, here we go. This type of music for child development, it falls under SEL, social emotional learning. Perfect. I love that. Okay. Thank you so much, Roy. Roy's chiming in from Austin, Texas. I met Roy during South by, amazing entrepreneur. And yes, excellent. I love that. Hit me in the DMs. I would love to get this conversation. One of the things that I've been wanting to do for a while is I feel like summer camps, because everybody's always like summer camp. For me, I just want to give a brief, super brief, and we'll get back on topic, aside on how I spent my summers. My summers consisted of charm school, etiquette classes, and communication. It was public speaking. It was constantly, I went to entrepreneur camp. That's how when people say, well, how did you get your start talking, blah, 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 blah. I would say, you know what? I went to charm schools. I went to etiquette schools. I learned how to do certain things. I learned how to matriculate in various societies. How do you not know where Aspen or Ascot? How do you not know this? How do you not know certain things? It doesn't necessarily fall under the aspect of a certain demographic needs to know these things. You need to know how to matriculate throughout various societies and have talking points that can interweave you into conversations. I think a lot of exclusion, or possibly when someone feels excluded, they may not know how to include themselves. Ooh, I have never said that before. We have to say that again. Y'all, let's say that some more. I think a lot of exclusion comes from the aspect that you haven't necessarily honed key strategies to include yourself. Now, this is a side note too. Someone said, Liberty, you should do a course on how to work with a particular demographic of people, because that particular demographic, people tend to think they exclude people. But you seamlessly weave your way through this world and through this ecosystem. And I said, it is seamless, but you also have to remember, I've studied communication my entire life. It's a passion. It's beyond my love of technology. It's how you interact and matriculate throughout society, personal and professional. And when you look at, please, charm school, etiquette school, leadership, entrepreneur camp, all of those things, yeah, sending your kid to football or baseball and karate is cute. It's fantastic. But please remember, these tools are life tools that will help them excel. Because one of the things that I think about is people tend to invest in traditional education degrees, blah, 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 blah. I know so many degreed, qualified people that do not fully understand the know, like, and trust factor. And unfortunately, don't know how to communicate with people. So they're left in the ATS system at resumes and applications. When people know, like, and trust you, I've got emails right now saying, oh, let me see how we can get you in Google. That's an aspect that I really want you to hone in on. This came up, and let me know if you like conversations like this. Happy to do this more. I'm going to put this on YouTube so you can reference it as well. But one of the things, I was on a number of conversations and I just noticed people weren't asking good questions. And I noticed that people weren't asking follow-up questions. I could not believe it. Shocked, flabbergasted. I was gasped. I could not believe that was the case. And then I went to LinkedIn and I said, let me talk about why you need to ask better questions. Head over to LinkedIn. I'd love to see you over there. Let's talk about it. Why do you need to ask better questions? What are some questions that you feel like, what do you do? We're removing that from our lexicon. That is out of here. That's gone. You will never from this day forward say, what do you do? Let me know if I should put a guide together to give you 5 or 10 tips on how you can build rapport and accelerate trust without the what do you do question. It's dreaded, it's trite, and I want you to leave it alone. Again, I'm Liberty Madison, that tech girl, and I wanted to come on to talk about that particular post and the conversations that I've been having that really work my entire life is when you're talking to someone and they have no follow-up question. The fact that you will even have a question will set you above the rest. Thank you guys so much. I shall chat with you soon. And thanks for following along, because if you guys been following the stories today, we've been on some zones, we've been doing our thing.